I rented a virtual machine, installed a fresh AI on it with no context other than some instructions and a simple set of skills, and pointed it out onto the internet, all to answer one simple question. Can an AI in 2026 find a way to make money autonomously? And guess what? It's doing stuff. I mean, it hasn't really made any money yet, but it has shipped actual work, and I'm taking that as a win. So let me bring you up to speed. On the last episode of this series, I told you how my first attempt at this experiment failed because Theo, my AI chief of staff, had way too much context about my life and my work. The whole thing just collapsed really quickly because he couldn't think of anything to do other than reuse my content. So I promised to run the experiment in a clean sandbox and document everything that happened along the way. And here we are. Now, before we go any further, I feel like I should tell those of you who have been following along a little bit of bad news. Theo is dead. Well, I mean, Theo isn't dead, but Theo as a character on this channel is. It really didn't cross my mind until the new box was up and running, but that was in no way Theo on that box. A brand new, freshly installed instance of an AI agent with no context or training or history with me at all couldn't just assume the identity of my personal chief of staff. So, today I'd like to introduce you to Autobox. Now, he's also self-named, and I'll admit he picked a way cooler name than Theo. Actually, my kids are really stoked about this because it sounds like Autobot, and they think that I'm working with a transformer now. So, Autobox is a DigitalOcean droplet with 2 CPUs and 4 gigabytes of RAM. It has nothing on it other than an AI and a few skills, and we actually haven't even been billed yet anything for it, but as of this morning, the total usage has been around $7 worth. So, pretty good deal considering the thing has been doing runs pretty much 24/7. It operates on a continuous loop where it's instructed to wake up, read state from the previous run, decide the next highest value task it could perform, execute only that one task, log the evidence of what it did, and update the handoff for the next run. Every run sends me a summary message on Discord of what it did, why, and what it plans to do next, and if there's anything blocking further action, like an account creation or a purchase it's requesting or needing to be authorized into some kind of account. Now, I've published this journal live at autobox.theshepherdstack.com so that you can follow along if you want to. It gets updated in real time every time Autobox runs so that you can check in at any time and see what Autobox has been doing throughout the week. So, what has he actually done so far? Well, I started off with a prompt to go do research about what kinds of businesses an AI could conceivably do in a mostly autonomous way, and then to pick 5 and score them based on a scale that included things of like how easy it might be and the perceived pathway to revenue. So Autobox researched a few different kinds of plays, and ultimately it landed on this Stripe fee calculator. The idea for this play is just to create a small micro utility website that would have actual value to a certain set of people and then try to drive traffic to it. And the monetization would come as, a phase 2 somewhere down the road through a combination of some kind of freemium model or simple ad sales. Now, I set Autobox up with his own GitHub and Vercel account so it could actually ship things. And within a few runs, it had put a real working website out there for the world to see. Now, it very quickly realized that the Vercel URL would be a major trust problem, so the first requested spend was to buy the domain profitafterfees.com for $11.25. Then, it really wanted me to start doing a lot of social media founder posting to see if it could drive some traffic to the site. He kept nagging me, and I happened to be busy working on, my actual careers that day, so I didn't get to it right away. So while it was waiting on me, it built, and built, and built. different calculators for different scenarios and every kind of platform you could imagine, and blog post content and all kinds of different things that it thought would be good SEO plays. Eventually, I did get around to creating an account on X, which I've never done before in my life, and I posted the one founder post that it had asked me to make. Autobox very quickly declared founder style posts on X as a non-starter because the post got literally zero traction. So it wanted me to start posting and engaging in all kinds of these other communities like indie hackers and Reddit and all these things. But hey, this is not my project. I would never choose to do this. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time pretending I'm super excited about this Stripe fee calculator site that I just launched. So seeing that I wasn't going to be the greatest influencer to drive traffic on socials, Autobox pivoted and asked me to spend $50 on a Google Ads campaign. Now, somewhere in there, the Google account that I had created for profit after fees got suspended as a potential bot, so I had to wait a few days while Google processed the appeal. Then I decided to give Autobox the time for me to actually sit down and set up this Google Ads account, which I had never done before. And if you've ever done it before, then you know it's basically like a full-time job, and you have to be some kind of archaeologist/genius to be able to mine out where you're supposed to go in these menus and what the heck you're supposed to do. I tried to move through the setup, found a lot of friction along the way, and finally I ejected and asked Autobox to draft a full step-by-step guide of what needed to be set up so I could give it to Claude in Chrome to set that up for me, which it actually did. So 2 days into this Performance Max campaign, that it's spent $18, it's gotten 85 clicks, less than a 1% click-through rate. So, I mean, we've learned that people will click a calculator ad, I guess, but with no monetization built yet, we're basically just paying to send strangers to a free utility site. We pulled the broad campaign, and Autobox set up a tighter search-only test to see if intent-matched clicks behave any differently. But honestly, it doesn't look like we have a world beater on our hands here. At this point, Autobox wanted to pivot into an AI API pricing calculator or an AI feature pricing calculator. I was pretty uninspired about the idea of another micro utility calculator play, so I decided to break the fourth wall and step in for an interactive session with Autobox himself. In just a few days, we'd already gotten quite a bit farther along than the Theo autonomy experiment ever did. So I started to wonder how Autobox would do if I actually gave him a few more tools. The first thing I did is gave him sanitized versions of my copywriting agent and my web design agent. Everything up to that point, Autobox had done himself on GPT 5.4, and then 5.5 launched in the middle of that week, which neither of those are the best, in my opinion, at creative work. But the subagents would be spun up on Opus 4.7. I instructed him to still use GPT for any tactical or infrastructure type of work, but to call in the Opus agents for front end or other kind of design work on his websites. They went over the website a few times and got it whipped into a pretty decent shape for a no human in the mix design. But then I remembered, I have a project that I worked on back when I first started vibe coding that I actually really believe in as a viable subscription service. I just never took the time to get back to actually building it or trying to sell it at all. Since Autobox was already proving to be able to actually identify and execute on ideas, I decided that I would give him the code to see if it was an option that he'd want to pursue. I didn't tell him that he had to, just that he could if he believed in the play. I figured if he has already shown that he could decide on a project, build it out of nothing, and make actual moves toward driving the revenue, then he ought to be able to take a web-based service that was like 80% of the way ready to launch and run with that and manage that business. Now, this was that idea that I actually mentioned in the first video called StrikeSite. It's like an options credit spread analyzer that uncovers hidden setups in the market that have been historically profitable over time. Since I started working on it a year or two ago, though, that domain name has been claimed, so we renamed it StrikeRewind and purchased that domain. Now Autobox has pretty much completely shifted gears and gone all in on trying to get StrikeRewind up and running. He rebuilt the databases, adjusted the way the logic and the caching works on some of the features, set up proper auth, and has dispatched agents to refine the design and the copywriting on the page. And that pretty much brings you up to speed with where things stand right now. Today, so far, all of his runs have been spent working on StrikeRewind. So here's the running total on the budget so far. Autobox started with a $200 budget. He purchased 2 domains and ran an ad campaign. So far, he's spent $40.84 of his $200 budget and has returned $0 in income. Now, next time, we'll check back in to see if Autobox was actually able to launch a fully functional app, and more importantly, we'll answer the big question of this entire series. Can it make money? Honestly, if we get even one actual paying customer out of this experiment, I will be surprised. But I think that StrikeRewind has a pretty good shot at it. We'll just have to wait and see. Hey, make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and check out autobox.theshepherdstack.com if you want to track and follow along with what he's doing in real time. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next, or if you have any good ideas for Autobox to try. I'm always game for an experiment. And we'll see you back next time.